So I knew the objective was to recruit and train as many people as I possibly could and to make them great at their job. So I wanted to recruit everyone in the town and have them all be successful. But it doesn't work that way. And the reason it doesn't work that way is because...
Welcome to Durand on Demand. I am joined by our host here, Dave Durand. And today we're going to be talking about scaling. And so this is an important topic, Dave, because we're in the midst of really scaling our company. And you've scaled many businesses in the past to past 7, 8, and 9 figures. So today I'm going to kind of take the position of the entrepreneur who's looking to you for guidance, which is what you're best at in leading giants. And
you're also the avatar of all the questions that we get from other people who are trying to do this sorts of thing.
Exactly.
Yep. And I have to say that it is a compliment to you because you know a lot of the answers to these questions, but you're able to kind of assimilate our audience and what they're wondering, which is good.
Yeah, that's good. And a lot of it is from my own questions that I've come across. A lot of it, like you said, is questions that we've come across from our audiences and questions that I've gotten from other friends of mine who are looking to start or scale their businesses. So just to give you the credit here, you've started and scaled companies 7, 8, and 9 figures. Talk about the process of starting a company and then scaling it between the 6 to 7 figure mark. What does that look like, and potentially how does that differentiate between scaling to 7, 8, 9 figures and above?
So we're going to keep this one like very, very directly toward the sales side of it.
Great.
Okay, scaling there's a lot to do with scaling. There's the financial side of scaling. There's the production side of scaling, no matter what it is that you're doing. If you're providing a service or you're even a SaaS company, you need to increase the number of engineers you have. There's always something that scales up to when it comes to production. Although the great SaaS companies will tell you that they have a scalable tool. Yeah. It's never actually that true. If it was entirely scalable, they wouldn't continue to have to hire engineers. But
that makes sense. I recently came across an article, actually. One of our connections, Sam, sent it to me, and it basically talked about how B2B SaaS companies are potentially, stagnating in terms of growth, right? However, you built a company towards the tail end of, 2000s, the early 2000s, where print media was effectively at
going
a decrease.
Away, right?
And you came in as an innovator, somebody who wasn't necessarily familiar with the industry in the sense of you came in with new ideas. So talk about scaling that company first. That way we have a little bit more tangible details and how you went from the 0 to 7 figure mark.
So there's a couple of different things that are really relevant. And again, we're talking about scaling when it comes to the sales side of it, okay? On the sales side of scaling, and I learned this as a young guy. Frankly speaking, I learned this when I sold Cutco. And it was fantastic. I was like, okay, so I sold Cutco knives. I did an okay job as a sales rep. I mean, in my office, I was the number one person, but nationwide, there were hundreds of thousands of people. And, I was definitely in the top 1%, but I wasn't a super achiever salesperson. And the reason is because I enjoyed sales, but I loved leading. It wasn't where my heart was. So I knew, wow, I could really learn to build, organize, coordinate, motivate, train effectively these people to do this very job. If I continue to sell myself, I'm not going to be able to be where my passion is. And I recognize some people that had a total passion for selling. That's where they wanted to be. And they could have been good leaders, but they chose not to be. Others that had a passion for selling who would have been horrible leaders. And then there were some people who had a passion for leading but understood sales and were competent in it, could have done both, but they liked one more than the other. I think this is really important because eventually you're going to talk about who to promote, and you will oftentimes promote people from the sales field, and they're not always the best salesperson. But they're also not the person who is bad at sales or irresponsible in sales and unmotivated in sales, but really good with people so they could lead just fine. No. If you haven't proven that you have the steel to get in, the metal to get in and to do something when it comes to sales, then you really don't have much of a leg to stand on when it comes to building a sales team, even if you prefer the leadership side more. Okay, so I was given the opportunity to start my own office. And when you start your own office, it's a little bit like an insurance agency, or it's a little bit like a real estate agency, where it's like, okay, well, you've got an objective. You can sell yourself. You can sell products yourself. But the bigger you build the team, the more you're going to sell. Now, you get a percentage of the team, whereas you get a small percentage of the team, a large percentage of your individual sales. And some people are like, yeah, that sounds like a Ponzi scheme. No, real estate and insurance, or even the Cutco business, they're not Ponzi schemes, or what's the other one? The network marketing companies. They're not that either. A network marketing company has downlines with a bunch of people that make commissions there. And the only way it becomes an actual Ponzi scheme is if you actually have the way the financials work, that you can't create opportunities equal at lower levels as they are at the top. It's an interesting formula for why things are like that. But people say that, and the only reason they say that is so they don't have to participate in something that seems good, and they can just sit there and point fingers. But real estate is not a Ponzi scheme. Although there's some real estate laws that have been changed that are affecting commissions, a totally different thing. But neither is insurance for the most part. What happens is if you're going to build an agency of any type, okay, you're going to either say, okay, I'm a one-man agent. I'm going to sell advertising services. I'm going to sell online services. And when I do that, because I'm a one-man show, I make all of the profits. But I can only do so much. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hire 10 salespeople, and I'm going to have them go out and do that. And I want to pay them a strong commission, but there's got to be a little left. Otherwise, why would I hire them? Why would I build my own company if I'm not going to make some money from the work that they're doing? Now, it's a servant leadership thing, which means I'm creating the opportunity for them, and I'm supporting them in a way that if they didn't have me, they couldn't do what they're doing. So yes, I receive, but I give. They receive, and they also provide something. And it's a great relationship, and people enjoy that because there's decency, there's fairness, all the things we talk about with the cardinal virtues. Anyway, so I started recruiting and training people, and I realized, wow, there's really not a limit to the number of people I can recruit in this area in the Cutco business. And the reason there wasn't is because the customer base was so massive, you never really stepped on each other at all. And even if you did, people would buy more, okay? And so I knew the objective was to recruit and train as many people as I possibly could and to make them great at their job. So I wanted to recruit everyone in the town and have them all be successful. That's an exaggeration. But it doesn't work that way. And the reason it doesn't work that way is because most people who try sales fail. This is the vast majority of people who try sales fail. In fact, there are a lot of studies that show that even if you were successful in sales in one company, it doesn't mean you're going to be successful in sales in another company. And so people use a lot of matched metrics in order to find salespeople. Well, I started realizing, wait, if I find people who are willing to learn and people who will accept responsibility and can communicate in a relatively decent level, it doesn't matter their background. Those are the things that matter the most. Now, if you were selling some sort of technical medical equipment where you needed, a medical degree or engineering equipment, you would need somebody that has all those things and some background. But that's not what this was. So the objective was to recruit and train and develop as many people as possible and to make them great at it. And the bigger that sales army, the more you could actually sell. And I became quite proficient at, and of 900 offices there, ended up leading the organization by recruiting, training, and developing not just people there, but then recruiting, training, and developing people to open new offices in order to do the same sort of thing over again. That's where that idea of leading giants came in. I was like, you know what? I don't want to just lead average people. I want to lead people to become incredible. And then I want to lead great leaders to become great leaders to lead even more people and to become incredible. And you've met some of the people, actually even on this show, who 20 years ago were in the organization and now have gone on to do quite big things, and we haven't even spoken since they were a part of that. So that was where the genesis of it was. And then I started a few other companies even before Best Version Media where I did the same thing.
Yeah, it sounds like basically you had a proven product and you had a market for it, and you focused on one acquisition channel, which was outbound sales. Is that accurate to say?
It is. So companies are one of three things, and they're almost always the third, but sometimes they're not at all. One, a marketing company. You market, you advertise, you have a direct response. People call in. They're basically order takers. They're not really even upgrade salespeople. People have made a decision about it, and you do it. That's a marketing-focused company. Then there are sales-focused companies where you really don't have any marketing at all. People would not have heard of the product other than the fact that a salesperson called them, they went out and they did a presentation, they educated them on the product, but they do it at such a level that it's kind of commonplace and people know about it. Sometimes that was over the phone. It still is for some companies, but a little bit more rare to just sell directly over the phone like that, although it happens. And then the third one, though, is where there's a little bit of a marketing arm. And this, of course, is one of the big online influencer-oriented things where you've got, some sort of message you're sending out. Then you've got people attracted to that. You've got a click funnel, which means they go to the website, go to Leading Giants and do this, please. Okay. And you allure them into the greatness of the offer and product that you have, assuming that it is really a good product. And they click on it. And they either order immediately or somebody will call them to answer their questions and walk through. That person is generally more than just an order taker. They understand the process and the product and they can articulate it effectively. These are very good ways to do it. Now, one of the things that's interesting is that the people who do only the marketing side will tell you that this is the way you have control. But it's not really, especially in today's digital marketing world. It was the way you took control if you were on billboards or you were in newspapers or there was the radio station or the 3 TV stations because you had a controlled way of entering your product in the marketplace. But it was pretty expensive to buy into it because there were a lot of products, but only so many places to put it. Now with digital services, there's gazillions of different products and everybody's trying to do it. So it really has diluted the focus. So you have to become very, very, very good at it and the algorithms change. And that's to the advantage of all of the major companies, Meta and Google, whatever, that are selling these services because the more you amp up your charge, the easier that it gets, the more you can tell other people how easy that is. And if that were true, now it's easy for everyone, which means it's easy for no one. So the algorithms have to change. So in other words, not pointing fingers at Meta or Google for doing things intentionally to mess with us, although it does oftentimes feel like, oh, I just figured this out and we just had a good return. Now I'm doing it again and they're messing with me. And both happen, actually. Both do happen. So you don't really have control because you're constantly trying to do the research to figure out the code that they're resending you. In sales, it's different. You do actually have way more control because when you are a sales-oriented organization, you want to build by scaling through salespeople. Your key thing is, first of all, you have to find the salespeople. And if you're going to build to scale, in one of the organizations, I built tens of thousands. I think it was the biggest year I had 30,000 salespeople that we recruited. In the other organizations, it was thousands, but not tens of thousands. And the hard part is, how do you find them? How do you incentivize them? How do you retain them? Do you operate with an employee relationship, with the 1099 relationship? What are the responsibilities that they're going to carry? How big is their opportunity? And then how to find them. So what happens is most people don't know this. This is the thing I'm going to tell you that I will. Even like the biggest investors in companies, and I've met with the biggest banks and the biggest bankers, are just unaware of this, that the economy does affect a recruiting organization, but it has a kind of reverse effect. So what happens is when the economy goes bad and people are losing jobs, recruiting goes up. So what does that mean? It means you have a bigger army of people to go out there and do what it is you want them to do. So even if collectively, and by the way, you don't want this to happen, and there are many ways you can actually prevent this from happening, okay? But even if collectively, they're 10% less effective, which means that the average person that was making $220,000 a year is making $200,000 a year. You don't want that, okay? But let's say that does happen. That's bad for that individual, and that can be bad for other people, but if the economy is bad, there's not a lot of other jobs, and most of the people who went from 220 to 200 are happy because their friends just got unemployed, okay? But if they're in a really good setting, a lot of those people don't go from 220 to 200. They go from 220 to 270, 280, because they just get better at what they do. But let's say that did happen. So you're 10% behind on the average performer, but you can double the size of your team. Right. Do the math. You're growing at a massive pace. Now, there's a reverse side to that. The reverse side is the economy does really well. People command a lot of money, and there's a lot of opportunity. So they go and they leave, or it's harder to find them. You can't recruit as many or retain them. But at the same time, the economy is better, so they're selling more. So the person who is naturally selling 220 is selling like 300 and they don't want to go anywhere. And that is positive, and because it's positive for them, other people say, oh, I want to be like Nico, and I want to make $300,000 a year in this sales role with us flexibility. And where other people aren't recruiting, you can find a way to actually intensify or increase your recruiting because of the offering that you have. So if you get good at this, it doesn't matter, good economy, bad economy, you can grow horizontally and vertically. The vertical growth is the growth that you have of the individual performers, and that's, if you really want to build a great organization, you want to care most about that. Like, I want everybody's individual opportunity, no matter what happens economically, to go up, okay? But then you have horizontal growth. Now, horizontal growth oftentimes impacts, in a very powerful way, the vertical growth. Because if you've got product offerings and now they're offered in a lot of different places, there are things like, depending on what industry or business you're in, cross-selling, where you are now able to sell into an opportunity that I have provided because I'm next to you, or I have a client that you might need, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot of different ways to do it. So I think one of the things that people have to remember is how am I going to take control of my business? Am I going to do this purely through marketing? Am I going to do it through a combination of both? Or am I going to drive just exclusively a sales arm and then know how to do it? I will tell you this, though. For every 100 people that know how to build a marketing arm or a ClickFunnels, there's 1/4 of one person. I'd have to go all the way up to, for every 400 people that know how to do that effectively, there's one person that knows how to build a great sales team.
What's interesting is there are a lot of articles which you and I have read together and collectively on LinkedIn and everywhere else, where it basically alludes to AI taking over things like programming, marketing. I mean, you put in some prompts and it'll handle everything for you, where, and you've said this yourself, where AI is no longer a competitive advantage.
No, it's not.
So when you have stats like that, and obviously we're not quoting the direct stat, but let's say, you know, that is kind of the average for every 100 people that know how to market, there's what'd you say, a quarter of a person that
no, yeah. I mean, for every four, and by the way, this is anecdotal, right?
Yeah.
But for every 400 people that know how to market and teach how to, you know, do everything online, there's only one that knows how to really build and lead a great sales team.
So to your point, and my point here is, if you learn that skill, it seems to me that is the competitive advantage.
Oh, it is by far. AI. And by the way, I want to also put this out there. I said for every 400 people that know how to do it digitally, there's one that can lead and build a sales team. That's not 1 in 400 humans. That's how many people can what percentage of the population can effectively teach you how to do something from a digital perspective in marketing? I don't know. That's only 2% itself. So we're talking about a sliver of a percentage of people that know how to do this, but they could learn. It's very learnable. But the reason that people fail at it, and this is the kicker, I will tell you, it's because even if they have the knowledge, they lack the virtue. Virtue is at the center of great leadership, particularly sales leadership. The ability to make great decisions, understand fairness and justice, to have the fortitude and courage to lead, the temperance to know what to say when, the understanding, the ability to build a beautiful image of what's taking place that they want to engage into. So you really need to work on yourself if you're going to do it. And what most people do when they try to teach it is they say, here's the bits and bytes of sales leadership. Here's the formula for leading somebody, but it's way more than that, which is why, by the way, I never worry about competitors ever. I just don't.
It's funny because so all of these frameworks and the way that Dave is kind of alluding to setting the stage for you becoming a great sales leader, this is all in our Leading Giants programs. And we have over 100 videos. I mean, probably at this point in time, I would say dozens of hours, but I'm not even sure yet.
Yeah, I mean, in 4 months, we have almost 400 videos on YouTube, and we have 120 professionally done,
micro modules.
Yeah. You saw me suffering with micro modules. I could see that you were like, the man can't think of the word micro modules. I will save him. Thanks. Because I was stuck.
Yeah, it's a great program, by the way. Moving on to, actually, I'll bring it back up to this point. I've been recently trying to find some leisure time in my week because I do horribly at that. I'm always thinking about business. So what do I do to decompress? I watch a Netflix show, effectively, it's like a movie on business. But
that's relaxing.
That's super relaxing. It was on Uber.
Yeah.
And the entire time I'm watching this series, I see this exponential growth of a company that is clearly a disruptor, first in its space. And the thing that ousted Travis, I'm forgetting his last name, the founder and CEO, was lack
bad
of
behavior.
virtue.
This is, I mean, you look at this all over the place. I think it was the same too in, what was it, WeWork?
WeWork, yeah.
And so many. I mean, just time and time and time and time again. This person removed for this bad behavior. This person removed for this bad behavior. And, you know, frankly speaking, some of them are removed for, you know, nefarious reasons where people can be, you know, I don't want to speak to any individual person, even when we're talking about these sorts of things, because you don't know who is or who is not falsely accused of something or other, and I don't want to add to the pain. Most of them are not falsely accused, though. I mean, usually when these things are happening and there's proof behind it, it's a pretty substantial thing. But even Sam Altman, you know, this guy's, you know, of course, that whole big controversy is still taking place, but it took place a little while ago. And it's not necessarily the same types of controversy. It's more like manipulation and intimidation and things like that. But, and again, I'm not involved, so I can't tell you. I've heard both sides of this, but it's an interesting thing. You know, nobody is saying about any one of these people that they lacked the credential or the intellect to be able to do the job. Every one of them saying that they behaved badly, and that's why they're out.
And that they created well, at least with Travis and Uber, they created a culture that enabled that, and effectively it's funny because I was watching it, I'm like, so this is the worst version of yourself .ent or LLC or whatever, because I saw it transpire in the series. One of the things, Dave, that I wanted to ask you is, when do you know that you are ready to handle the growth that comes your way? So you've built back offices with great software and infrastructure in the past. How do you keep up with the growth from an outbound sales team with a back office? Okay,
that's a great question. Now, before we get to that back office, and I want to answer the question, but I want to talk about what leads you to the need for a back office.
Great.
Okay, so in almost every single one of these organizations before, now with AI, I mean, everything has changed so fast, especially with AGI, and you know, and we're on the cusp. And you know, I remember just saying in videos 3 or 4 years ago, listen, you know, no matter how fast and great computers are, you still can't compete with the human brain. I mean, you'd have to have a warehouse the size of whatever sorry, my friends, it's like that's not really true anymore, just like within a short period of time. So AGI in particular is that thing. I mean, as soon as computers are starting to think better, superior to human beings, and to manipulate that way, that's a very different thing. So we're going to get into in another episode, how does that affect sales? How does it affect sales to know that, you know, there already are cases where people have been in Zoom meetings, face-to-face with people in a Zoom meeting, who have handed money over for a sale, only to find out that none of the people that were actually in the meeting were real human beings, okay? So when that sort of thing happens, how does it affect selling? Is it going to make it better? For some people, it will. I would prefer to be around a really competent person who I know as an individual person is not trying to manipulate me so I can get the proper answers. But are they not trying to manipulate you? Because AI knows how to lie, and it knows what its outcome is. And if its desire is to build a business and its desire is to make a sale, and is actually AGI, it is smarter than you don't want to mess with it. You'd rather be with a dum-dum, some stupid human who you can actually read when they're, you know, doing whatever they're doing. So how does this, and by the way, as a business owner, what software do you want? The human being or the really good AGI managing this? Now there's a circumstance which is the in-person side of things, but we know it's radically happened in sales. The in-person effect, the amount of commerce that is done face-to-face with a person shaking hand, now just online, is radically diminished. And so how does that play out? Is there going to be a pushback? I mean, decades ago, John Nesbitt wrote a book called High Tech, High Touch. No, was it that, or maybe Daniel Burrus and Technotrends. I don't know, but the idea was that the more technology there's there, the more people are going to push against the technology and want to interface with human beings. That might be the case. But what I can tell you is no matter what, in building individual salespeople, in my opinion, will be now the most necessary part of the future. This right here, if you really want to get ahead, for the past 7-8 years, people are like, I got to get online and learn how to digitize my way. It's going to be more old school. Now, you're going to need to know that. So I'm not speaking against that. But what I am going to say is that's not going to be the strategic advantage anymore. It's like, wow, I'm actually a human being who interacts with human beings in a way that builds actual trust and can motivate. Man, I think that's really where we're headed. So, but let me get to this, answer your question. Before those technologies were available, which basically allow you to say, oh, we're going to scale a sales field and we're going to go from 1 to 1,000 people. Let's buy an app that can help me do that from an administrative perspective, or develop one, paying commissions or a CRM. And look what happened to Salesforce just recently. Their stock is going way down because every high school kid and their brother is building a CRM that's just as good, okay? So what's happening is these things just radically change. But before those were available, we were paying people commissions on spreadsheets and all that kind of stuff, and with a yellow pad and a piece of paper. Once you get to the point where you want to scale something, you need to be able to scale it effectively. But you need 2 proofs of concept. One proof of concept you need is the product. People like that. I have a minimally viable. So I would call, so people talk about proof of concept and they talk about MVP. That minimum viable product, to me, in my opinion, I'm using my own experience, okay, needs to go from that to proof of concept. Minimally viable is like the wheel and a wagon, okay? Proof of concept is the Ferrari, okay? So the salespeople actually help you get there. They're selling something that's minimally viable. You're getting feedback. You're iterating and reiterating. Now you turn it into something fantastic. It becomes easier to sell. They sell it more effectively, and now you have something. So now you build those systems or buy those back office systems so that you can scale. Then you have to put together a really comprehensive plan to identify who the salespeople are, how to attract them, how to bring them through a funneled recruiting experience into a top-notch Class A training program, which what we always say in my companies is leave no man behind. Man or woman, clearly. We want to make sure that everyone who comes to the program is unbelievably effective and efficient, but you can't want it more than they do. And you will not want it more than they do, which means that you have to have this really strong ability in leadership to decipher the difference between caring too much, which means that you're investing time into people that won't invest it into themselves and drive you crazy, and letting them go and focusing on the people that actually do well. And how do you have those conversations? And now you can learn to really scale things.
What's interesting is, Dave, you're effectively giving it away, right? For those business owners who are looking to scale, I mean, we can tailor all of these programs and effectively exactly what you're saying for a 12, 24, 48-week time period so that you can go from 0 to 1, 1 to 10, 10 to 100, and so on and so forth. So if you're watching this, I want to invite you to go ahead and click to apply. We're only taking a few spots for business owners who are looking to scale, and myself and another one of our team members will make sure that you're a good fit so that we can continue to grow your company the right way, the Leading Giants way.
Yeah, and by the way, too, the scaling, like I said, too, there's other sides to it. Like, we need the money. Where's that going to come from? Okay.
You read my mind. I was going to just ask you that.
Yeah, and then and it comes from a lot of different places, of course, and most people could probably just rattle them off. There's your own money. There's an angel investor. There's a loan. There's mortgaging your house. There's venture capital. There's all sorts of things that people do to get the money, but you need it. But another way to do it is you rub two sticks together, basically, and you run the company at such a low burn that you get some of your own dollars and you self-fund the company. I've done that too. I've funded companies for millions. I have started companies and funded them for less than $20,000 and turned them into hundreds of millions, by the way. And then other companies, where, you kind of like hunted and killed your food on a daily and weekly basis until you actually were able to buy a freezer and store a few things in there, and you could actually build a little bit further too. That's the way it goes. And then there's the production side. So, but those are the three. Those are the three main ones. Production, which means supply chain. I would put technology under all three of these. Technology is under sales, and sales and marketing. And it's also under finance. But if you grow your sales arm faster, you can pay for it, which means that you've got accounting issues, that you don't understand collections, you don't understand contract management. You've got to write good contracts, and you've got to be able to collect, or it doesn't really matter. You need to know your audience, you need to know how reliable they are as far as paying for things like this. And then production. So if you're selling like crazy, but you can't pay for it and you can't actually produce it, it doesn't matter. So how do you get ahead of all these? Which is, by the way, this is what it means to be a CEO. The CEO is the person who doesn't love sales so much that he builds a sales arm and he neglects these other things. But he's also the person who's not doing all of these things. He is the person making sure they are being done. Now, he might have come from finance, which means he spends a lot of his day in finance, but he makes sure that he's got somebody brilliant in sales that is leading that team the right way and reporting to them, and they're not ignorant of it. See, there are CEOs who don't like sales, and they don't like salespeople, and they've kind of been like honest about it throughout their career, and yet they have them. That is like saying, I hate women and I hate marriage. Will you marry me? Like, why in the world would they, right? But people do that sort of thing. And they don't realize they're getting themselves in a trap. So it makes a lot of sense to find a way to love each one of these disciplines, even if you're not doing it.
So it sounds like you're having to learn, various disciplines as kind of the solopreneur. Effectively, then you are able to delegate some of these tasks out predominantly through the Leading Giants method, a sales arm. And then once the revenue starts coming in, you can kind of fund your way into a solid back office and the technologies that you need to continue to scale that sales arm. Of course, considering the fact that you have a proven product, that you kind of know your numbers. What are some of the pieces of data, so to speak, that you should really keep tabs on in the beginning so that once you start to scale, you really know, okay, this is what I need to invest my time, energy, and money into? The
first is great people. So this is the thing about this. This isn't, see, a lot of people say things to sound fancy, to sound virtuous, and to sound warm. This is absolutely the reality of the circumstance. There's, a great person solves a problem. That's good. When Peter Drucker said that culture eats strategy for breakfast, this is what he meant. A great culture will always develop a great strategy. A great strategy with a bad culture is on life support. It's going to eventually die. So anytime that I've ever had a problem, in fact, we've got an upcoming guest, wrote a book called the 80/20 CEO. And he helped build and scale, he's in private equity, but he helped build and scale one of the organizations he was in. I have to go back and find the details, but I think he took it from like 100 million to like 700 million and then sold it or something like that in a pretty short period of time. He talks about the 100-day method. And you find one guy like that, or woman, and you put them in the right role and they fix everything. Yeah. That is really the key to this. So you've got a mess in a department, put a good, competent person in it. So what I am not saying is, oh, well, in the department, you're going to find this error and this error and this error and this error and this error, and here's how you change all of these particular errors, and here's how you readjust the accounting, and here's how you do you program this. No, I never did it that way. I found a great person who was competent. I put him in and I had him solve it. That's good. Now some people go, oh, well, then so you don't even know how to do it. Yeah, I just told you how to do it. And you know when I learned it? I learned it when I was in college. And when I was in college, I think we said this on the show one time, and I was sitting around the house one time, and my brothers were going to go change the oil in their car, and I was like, man, I can change the oil way faster than you while I'm on the beach. And they're like, what are you talking about? And I just grabbed the phone book. This is back in the day. Grab the phone book. I was like, literally, you can pay a kid a couple bucks to drive your car down there, give him some more, change the oil. You get it done, and you can go make a sale, or you can go build a business, or you can relax on the beach, and you don't have to do it yourself. Now, the reason that I don't like that analogy is because I actually have a lot of respect for the process of getting your hands dirty and doing something. This is good. This is what makes a man, right? But you have to know, why am I doing this? Am I doing this because I don't become soft? Am I doing this because it's kind of good for the soul? Yes, do that. But if you're doing it somehow because economically you're going to do better changing your oil by saving $7 on oil or on labor, you're not. You're not. You're missing the point when it comes to that. So great leaders don't try to solve every problem. At the same time, though, they have the intellectual ability to sit with that other person that they put in charge. And when they start identifying problems, know where to guide them and not to guide them. Even just this morning, I was doing that with one of my lead executives. I was like, this sounds like a good idea, but here are the cautions we have on it. And he stopped the program because he's like, those cautions, they were kind of eating at me. But when you said that, they affirmed in me that we shouldn't do them, so we're going to postpone them for a little bit. And that's a teamwork thing. That's where like a CEO and a vice president or a president or an executive chairman and a CEO come into interplay, is that sounding board thing. See, I love this, Nico. What I would always do is, when we had a problem to solve, I liked to get 4 or 5 of the smartest people in our company. It was our general counsel, who wasn't a marketing person, he wasn't a finance person, but super smart. He was a Marine, and he was an attorney in the Marine Corps. So he reported to generals all the time. So he's very, very efficient, but he's really wicked smart. And then, of course, I'd bring in the president of the company, vice presidents of the company, people in charge of marketing, people in charge of finance, CFO. And I would present an issue or a question, whether it be an HR thing that was complex, whether it was entering in a new market, whether it was a legal issue, but it could actually withstand the ears of people outside of the legal department. And and these were not yes people. They're very willing to wrestle an issue down for what is best. If all of them agreed, I knew it would be very unlikely we'd be wrong. And that method really has proven itself out. The only time that I see people make a mistake with that is when you start to get groupthink and people just want to agree. But if you're going to put 5 people in the room, you have to, each individual person there has to be the type of person that if 4 people see it one way, they are not afraid to say, I don't see it that way, and say why. But they don't stop with, because I want my, they are articulating it effectively, fairly, reasonably, sometimes passionately, but they're backing up what they're saying. They're not just saying it. And that can influence people the right way because they might have a particular insight. But the other reason I liked having all those disciplines in there is because they all come from a different perspective in solving a problem. And so really it's about the people and the scale and how to find those people.
It's a quote, and I'm not remembering who to attribute it to. It's the who, not the how. At a certain level, it sounds like it's the who, not the how, right?
It's absolutely the who, not the how, because the who provides the how.
That's good.
And that's the outcome that you want.
Yeah. So, okay, so specific to sales leadership, I do think that there are a few numbers that you leading salespeople should focus on. What are those specific data trackers that you would say, hey, if you focus on anything,
activity.
Focus on this. There you go.
I knew you were going to, and I, of course, stepped on your question intentionally because the answer comes so quickly on that. It's activity.
Yeah.
It really comes down to this, and I don't care if you're a B2B, you're a B2C company, I don't care if you're selling, a 18-month sales cycle. And some of the 18-month sales cycles have like 2 potential customers. Okay, so that's different. But most companies have more than that. The bottom line is this. If you do 10 presentations with a 10% closing percentage, okay, you're going to make 1 sale. If you do 20 presentations with a, 8% closing percentage, you're going to make 16. You're going to make 1.6 sales. I was told there'd be no math. You make 1.6 sales, okay? The bottom line is you can have less efficiency, but more activity and sell 60% more. I mean, that formula never fails. The part of the formula that does fail is when people whip their people into like overdrive submission and they want to quit because they're overworked and they can tell the only thing they care about is money and they never want to give them a break, and it's sell more, sell more, sell more. That is a very bad thing. So you have to have that combination of picking a reasonable amount of activity that also provides for the lifestyle that keeps retention. Because if you lose a great salesperson, you now usually have to go through so many people to find a replacement for that person. They're not worth losing. But at the same time, if you teach them how to be apathetic and lazy, and one of the things, all my companies, we say no coasting. Coasting is not allowed. When you build your commissions up and you're earning a lot of money and you think now I don't have to do a whole lot of activity, no way. That is unacceptable here, because we want to work with people who are the best version of themselves. And it would be like saying, I got myself in great shape now. I'm going to be lazy and I'm going to eat a bunch of cake. Eventually it's going to show up. It always shows up. And so we need to keep the disciplines that got us to the level we need to be when we're at that level. But because when building those disciplines, we enjoyed our life and we took appropriate breaks, we don't feel the desperate need to get to a certain point where we can finally take a break because we hate the life that we're in. See, this is why people don't get this right in leadership. They just mess this up constantly. And I think a lot of them feel real tough and badass because I'm driving my team, and I'm really making them get something done. And I'm like, yeah, but they don't like you, and they all quit. And then when they do leave, they talk about how bad it was to be there. I want everybody in the organizations that I lead to leave saying, I'm a better person because I was there. And even if I didn't fit or I didn't really like it, which by the way is true about every organization, right? I at least respected the people there, and I know that they were kind to me and they respected me, and I learned something when I was there I could take with me someplace else. But those things, they really matter.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here, Dave, in terms of scaling, how to scale, how to grow your company. These are all very practical things that I feel like the everyday business owner can implement today. But if you were to tell, your average Matt, 32, who's got a small business, maybe he's a solopreneur, and he's looking to take that next step, whether it's take that, leap of faith into his business, he's got a proven product, or maybe he has a proven product, but he's not getting to where he wants to be because he's working 100 hours a week and not home in time for dinner. What would you tell Matt?
I would say that Matt needs to ask himself a couple of questions. The real key financially, and so the younger the generation is now, the more they're inclined to want to be an entrepreneur. Okay? There's a whole lot of psychological and sociological reasons for why that happens to be. Most of them, I believe, are actually complementary, but there are some problematic ones that are in there. But the problem is that people look at entrepreneurship as the only way out now. Now, our business is actually built upon the idea that we want people to go run their own company, okay, so we can help them be entrepreneurs and scale. But we have another side to it, and that is if you want to stay where you are and master your career, become unfireable and lead at a super high level in an organization, we will show you that too. And the reason that we don't pit those two good things against each other is because the people who just go all in entrepreneur is the only way that you can actually be a good person, and it's the only answer, is that they spend more than they earn. That's really what it comes down to. If you make 100,000 and you spend 110, you're going to be miserable. If you make $1 million and you spend 1.1, you're going to be miserable. If you make 75,000 and you spend 65, you're going to be fine. In fact, David Ramsey just came out with top 5 professions of people that become millionaires. Yeah. And on there were 2 that were interesting. Engineers, which they can make some pretty good money. So people go, well, I can see that for an engineer. Yeah, but if you're an entrepreneur, you're like, engineers make good money, but they don't make like wicked, like sick entrepreneur money. Right. It's like steady salary. But teachers were on there. Yeah. And one of the reasons is because most teachers, when they enter into the profession, are like, I'm not going to make gobs of money, but I'm going to have a good retirement plan, and I'm going to live within my means. And they're around other teachers who live within their means. See, the business people, this is the interesting thing about it. You're a teacher around another teacher. You go to teachers' meetings. And for the most part, you're earning about the same amount. You're living about the same lifestyle. So you don't have this envious comparative issue taking place. Business people, it's not like that. You're entry-level business and you're looking at the guy up there that's got the Rolex, or the woman over there that's driving the, Bentley, and you go to another meeting with a different company and the CEO of that company who founded the company, and you're like, everybody's at a different level, and people are like, I want that. So what do? The young people become emulators, and these emulators want to emulate the people who have accomplishment and achievers that are kind of at this high level of integration in their lives. So they start to, they buy the used BMW, but they really can't afford that. They buy the watch before they can afford it, and they regret it later because it prevented them from doing other things. And now they're miserable. And so oftentimes Matt, the avatar you just described, sees a prison, sees a key, walks up to the door, opens it, jumps in, locks it, and throws a key across the room by spending more than he can earn. And that's the first thing you need to control. You know why? Because when you're an entrepreneur, that won't go away. And Matt will go from making $100,000 and spending $110 to making $1 million and spending $1.2.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, Dave, because a lot of the things that you just said, I'm like, man, that was like me 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 2 weeks ago, 2 days ago. But it's true. And, I appreciate Dave Ramsey because he shed a lot of light into me when, and not to make this about myself, but I think a lot of our generation needs to hear this, that the comparative thing, especially online nowadays, it is a real thing. When before the dawn of social media, you would compare yourself to your next door neighbor, and that would be kind of not a survival mechanism, but it would help you to level yourself up to that degree of the people that are around you in your same community, so it would potentially make you a better version of yourself, as opposed to when you're constantly scrolling on social media and seeing these 24, 25-year-olds supposedly making $100,000 a month, and you're over here like barely cracking $30,000 a year.
Yeah, and by the way, to be really clear about something, the idea of leveling up is good.
Yes.
And there is a certain side of comparing. Now, in general, if somebody says, should you live a comparative life? I would say no. Okay. But what are we really talking about? If I'm around a person who's more virtuous, compare myself and become like them, who is stronger, who is more honest, who's more effective, who's more savvy, and I can learn to be that. So if you're around people that have all these traits that you admire and you want to have those traits, and therefore your first objective is to have those traits, and as a result, I can also live the life that they're living, that's cool. That's a fine way to do it. And there's nothing wrong with the Bentley, and there's nothing wrong with the nicer house or anything like that, unless it's a facade, unless it's going to make you crumble, unless it's ahead of where you are in life, unless the Bentley came, you're literally, you've got a brother-in-law who's starving, and you drive down the street where there's the soup kitchen, okay, and you could help some people, but you just won't because you need your Bentley. I mean, that's the problem. If you're helping people and then you have a Bentley, okay. But is your Bentley like 90% of what you just spent? Or is it just a small portion of it? And what's interesting is, like, for a lot of wealthy people, if you look at the percentage that their mortgage would be if they have one, or their home value compared to their net worth or their income, it's a way, way, way smaller percentage than most people. Okay, you have a person that's making $125,000 living in a $750,000 home, okay, as opposed to somebody who's got a net worth of $50 million and they have a $3 million home. You might go, well, that $3 million home person, and of course, if you have a Nebraska $3 million home, it's going to look quite different than Malibu, which I don't know if you can even get into $3 million, but that's an important thing to remember. These things, they matter in that. And we need to make sure that if you're making the 150 and you've got the $750 or $1 million home, that you're not buying that as a status symbol ahead of being able to be a good person. And a part of being a good person is to think outside of yourself. And one of the ways you actually can build wealth in life, and you don't do this to build wealth, but is to recognize that you might have something a little bit more than somebody else has. That you can say, you know what, they need some help. I'm going to provide that help to them, and then I'm going to go earn what I need to earn to have what I have for myself too. So people pit this against each other too. Like, if you're going to be a really good person, you give everything away. If you're going to be a really good person, or if you're going to be a successful person, you just go after your own things and your own dreams. No, what you need is a proportionate relationship between the two in reasonability. And what is this? Prudence. And we talk about it all the time in the cardinal virtues. And if you fail at that, you're going to fail at the other stuff.
Yeah. That's good, Dave. Well, I'm sure we could keep on this topic for hours, if not days. But we talked about scaling. We talked about the virtues. We talked about, Matt and, his desires and his motives as to why he wants to do what he wants to do. Any parting words for our audiences here on this great, in my opinion, great episode?
Yeah, you know what, Nico, this is so funny because this is so not what you're asking, but I cannot believe you how many places I go now where people are saying, I'm watching the show, I'm watching the podcast. It's amazing. It changed this for me. I did this. I shared it with my son. I shared it with my neighbor. And you know what? I think this is great, but I'm almost like, well, why don't you comment then? Subscribe, share it, and then comment then. No, I know that's probably off-putting to the audience that I said that.
No, but it is important because when you comment and you like and you share, it lets the YouTube algorithm know that this is content that should continue to be served to other audiences. So it is important for not just the vision and mission that we have here, but even for other people to see this and benefit from it. So it's a generous thing for you to do, and it only takes about 5 seconds of your time. So
yeah, and by the way, I'd rather have them just enjoy the material and not do that. But it is funny how often, because usually what happens is they can tell that we have a banter, we have a bit of a sense of humor, and they'll say something. I'm like, well, how come you didn't? Come on, put it on there, and we have a little bit of it. So I think that some of them who have had that conversation with me that way are like, okay, he's making fun of me.
Thanks for tuning in to Durand On Demand. We will see you all next week.
Hey there, Giant. Thanks for watching Durand On Demand. I need your help with something. The world desperately needs more giants. You know it, and I know it. We've been around a lot of people struggling, figuring out how to make things go. So hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, share this with as many people as you can. We're going to build this audience, and we're going to help people slay dragons together.